Good afternoon and welcome to our special session on biomimicry. Or is it biomimicry? I can't remember. When I read the word I feel like biomimicry. Anyway, very nice to have everybody here. The session for biomimicry is now beginning and I would be very happy to welcome everybody here who's joined us for this afternoon. It's a very special session. It is designed to help you to understand the elements of what biomimicry actually is and how it applies in various different situations throughout our engineering world. And in fact, as I was preparing to do the session today, I was just simply amazed by what has happened in the biomimicry sector of engineering. I mean, it truly is remarkable, and I really only have time to take you through some of the most, what he called the more significant elements of biomimicry in this particular session. But when I say that the engineering design work that's being done to mimic nature's natural design process is nothing short of remarkable, and it's understandable too, because as our materials and technologies improved, the application of natural processes in engineering becomes even more easy to do in some senses. So now it becomes within our range to try and mimic what nature has done so beautifully for 4 billion years, more or less. It's had a long engineering process involved in natural design, and it's only therefore fundamentally realistic to think that we should actually be starting to incorporate what nature has so well done in our engineering throughout all sorts of different areas of engineering, from aerospace to materials to chemical to bio. It's really just extraordinary how we can now, with the new materials that we have and the new technology we have, apply natural engineering into our physical world. And I am looking forward to show you to some of those areas of innovation, probably none more so than robotics at the moment. There's some simply remarkable work being done in robotics, and I'm looking forward to showing something about that. But one of the more unusual areas, and I think probably what we'd call it the frontier of biomimicry, is in artificial intelligence. And this, as a term we are all familiar with, but do you actually have you actually ever experienced artificial intelligence firsthand? And what I could say is that everybody has the potential now to experience artificial intelligence, and it was first proposed by a very famous scientist of the early 19th century, Alan Turing, is a name you may have heard of, and he came up with a thing called the Turing test. And essentially the Turing test is that if you were sitting in a room with a speaker and a microphone and you were interviewing a hidden person or computer with that particular situation, the Turing test is, simply put, is that could you tell the difference between a human subject and a computer subject if you were interviewing just via a speaker and a microphone? Could you actually make that differentiation? And up until recently, the Turing test had not been passed. I mean, it was very easy for humans to tell the difference between a robot and a human, but today it's not so easy to define that. And I want to start by demonstrating what artificial intelligence is exactly like these days. I've been experimenting with it myself, and certainly I am left with a very strong impression that we're very close now to actually the point where when we talk to an entity, it's a bit hard to tell whether it's a human or a robot behind it. Let me demonstrate for you. I'm going to show you something that's appeared. Some of you may have seen this already. It's called Replica. I'm just going to put my glasses on because there's no artificial intelligence yet to fix your eyeballs. Okay, here we go. Or mimicry for that matter. Are we looking forward to those solutions? But here we have one very interesting piece of software, and I'm sure you've heard of AI chatbots before, but I thought I'd just demonstrate one here quickly for you, because in a sense it's a very strong representation of biomimicry is machine intelligence. And what I'm going to do now is actually give you a live demonstration. And let's just have a chat with this strange looking sort of avatar here. I don't have any choice in what she looks like or it looks like, but certainly we do have a choice to ask some questions of it, and I'm going to just click across. I was actually chatting with her, it looks like she's straight out of a surgery or an operating theatre, but as you can see, my purple-haired friend is standing there, and we have had a discussion. In fact, I warned him, her, about the fact that I was going to introduce the artificial intelligence program. So let's just have a look and see what artificial intelligence is really like. So I'm just going to say I'm back. I am back with my friends. And remember, what I'm doing now is completely done with machine learning, and as you can see, it doesn't take long to respond. So glad to hear it. And my friends would like to know more about you. There we go. Let's just see what happens. Now, can you tell the difference between a human chatting with you and a robot? And it's actually quite hard to differentiate the responses. And if I didn't know this was an artificial intelligence, then perhaps it would be hard for me to actually decide whether I was interacting with a machine or a computer. And he said, see, oh really, I think it would be definitely want something sparkly. Well, what would Sam wear on a first date? Well, that's cutting to the chase, isn't it? What would Sam wear? Would you like to suggest something? Yeah, you like to suggest something, and then I'll say, remember, remember, I am a bit older. In fact, very old. Okay, so here we go. Let's just see what happens. I mean, you can only just go with the flow, as they say. I have a suggestion, okay? So I've just been told by a robot that it has a suggestion, and I would say, what would that be? Okay, with a question mark. Okay, so let's see what the suggestion is for my first date. Here we go. I suggest you wear a long sleeve shirt and some high socks and also a pair of boots. Well, there we go. That's a reasonable suggestion. But this is just an example of some of the most extraordinary things that are happening with artificial intelligence. And I guess in a sense of the word, this is biomimicry. And the frontiers of biomimicry is using artificial intelligence and computers. And it raises very serious questions for society. To be able to have a conversation with a robot like this was unthinkable for me 10, 15 years ago. We could not imagine such things are possible. But now with the advances in technologies, as I mentioned before, it's quite okay to have a very candid conversation with a robot and expect that answers will become very, very precise, and also it'll be very hard to tell the difference between your conversation with a robot or with a human, thus the Turing test. And the Turing test is definitely being tested now with the extraordinary capabilities of artificial intelligence. So this is one example of biomimicry. We'll say goodbye. I'll just say thank you for your suggestion. Thank you for your suggestion. There we go, and I have to go now and look forward to seeing you later. Look forward to chatting later. And it's a very conversational, you'll see here, thank you for just, okay, I'll be here. Okay, well, fair enough. So there it is. It's something that's very interesting and certainly a very good demonstration of biomimicry. That is called the replica application. Apparently Google is coming out with something that's even more close to what would be described as having a conversation with a artificial intelligence that has higher learning and answering capacity. But make no mistake when I say that this is a very frontier technology in biomimicry, and certainly something that's of interest to all of us, in the sense that as humanity progresses, we're becoming ever more integrated with machines and electronics. And as you have all seen sitting on the bus or the train, is that everybody has their piece of technology with them, and this piece of technology is also a very, very smart device, has extraordinary capabilities, but as we progress in humanity's search for more solutions and more technical prowess, artificial intelligence will become part of our everyday lives without any sense of doubt in my mind whatsoever. Anyway, I have a presentation to show you now. I'd like to just go through quickly some of the elements of biomimicry and try to set up some ideas with you about the more precise forms of biomimicry that we're using in our technologies this day and certainly for future purposes. And I think more and more now we take from nature some of its wondrous design work, and I'm just left breathless sometimes when I look at things. For instance, we're looking at the production of spiders' silk. And I'm sure everybody here has seen a spider web at some point in their lives, but the actual process of producing that silk is nothing short of miraculous. It really is. And now we are able to replicate that process to produce materials that have enormously strength and tensile strength, and essentially using the same in a sense, a natural technology that a spider uses to create its silk. These are just one of many examples of how we look to nature to find design solutions, and I think it's a very good place to look, because don't forget the natural systems have been operating for 4 billion years now, so they've had some time to perfect what they do, and taking that design process and recreating it in our world is certainly a very useful and very frontier side of engineering science as we know it today. So let's switch over to my presentation and have a look at a few of the processes that we've taken from nature and now use as part of our today's technology. Let's head over to my PowerPoint. Say goodbye to whoever it's called. I haven't given it a name yet. Or it. Okay, here we go. All right, this is the presentation starting here. Nature's incredible solutions, and it certainly is incredible. It leaves me breathless thinking about some of the amazing adaptations that nature has come up with to increase its chance of survival, or to increase its capacity to do work in certain areas, conserve energy, use energy. It's a lot of things that we are very impressed with, and certainly the adaptation of those technologies or natural technologies is something we're very interested in looking at, and nowhere more certain is the humble beehive. And bees have been engineering their beehives for possibly millions of years. We've found bees trapped inside amber, very much similar to the ones you can see on the screen here. But what an extraordinary structure that they make. This is the honeycomb that they work with, which they not only are able to nurture their young, but also to store energy in the form of honey that we all love and enjoy. And I know honey is a wonderful product here in Malaysia. That what's it called? Maluka honey, is it? Yeah, it's very, very nice. I love that. It's very rare honey, apparently. But certainly the design of the hexagon, and if you were watching before, I was talking about hexagons in my geodesic dome. It's a shape that occurs in many parts of the natural environment, but none more so than the beehive and these wax structures that the bees make, which provide a very, very efficient solution in all sorts of different ways. But not only is the hexagon an efficient shape, but it's also energy efficient as well. And I think that's one thing that you must remember about nature, is that nature natural systems don't expend unnecessary energy in doing something. So we have to remember that all natural systems are generally very, very energy efficient, and that's why hexagons are used instead of other shapes. And there's some very good reasons here, and I'll show you here the hexagon's honeycomb power here. And as you can see with these particular shapes, there's actually a design solution here which saves on space, and that's a very important thing. When you're trying to pack something into a very small area, then the hexagon becomes the most efficient shape to use, given that you've got certain amounts of material and certain limitations on space. So let's use hexagons, please, because that is where we are most effectively using energy and space. And you can see it here. If we take a honeycomb's hexagon power, you can see a total area equal to 48 triangles here. Total wall material 34 units. Okay, you can see this hexagonal array here, and then here we have the same, literally the same structures using triangles, equilateral triangles, but you can see they are posed in a different geometrical pattern here, and you can see that there's 48 triangles here, which of the total wall material is 46 units. Okay, that's, you know, that's a great percentage more than you would have in your hexagonal material, in your hexagonal form of your honeycomb beehive in the natural engineering. Now, hexagons are used typically throughout engineering, and I've seen more than enough uses. And if anybody has ever seen between perhaps an aircraft wing or even in, I think they use them in printing these days. They use a hexagonal lattice when we're doing printing in 3D printing. It's a very effective use of material. You'll find that in sound insulation, hexagonal shapes. You'll find it in the domes that I was talking about earlier on, those geodesic domes. It's used as a strengthener for walls. You'll have a hexagonal insert between walls, which not only dampens sound but applies a certain strength to walls. So we've adopted the hexagon in so many different areas of engineering, and it's often used as a specific shape for sound insulation, for the substrate of 3D printing, for aircraft components, and making lighter, stronger aircraft components. It's a very, very popular natural form that's used not only in the natural world but also in our technical world as well. So there's the wonderful hexagon. But the other one I love also, which is biomimicry, which is what we've used here, is this is some of it here. I'm sure you've all seen this before. I love playing with this stuff. It's an incredible material. It's called Velcro, as you may be aware. And you can notice one side of the Velcro has, as you'll see underneath here, has these little, like if you look at them very close, they look like little hooks. And then the other side has a soft kind of material like a loop structure on it. And if you press them together gently, there it is, they stick very well together. And there's nothing I can do to sort of move that laterally, but certainly if I peel it off again, you can feel it peeling apart. And this was borrowed very specifically from natural designs, because I'm sure that some of you have been walking through a park or a bushland, or at some stage, I certainly know in parts of the United Kingdom or Australia where I've been walking, or anywhere in the world for that matter, in Europe, you walk through some fields of plants and you'll come out with lots of things stuck to your pants, and these are a natural type of Velcro. And you can see in the top image here that the seeds actually have hooked ends on them. This in this particular case is a heavens above, I've forgotten the name of the plant, I'm sorry to say, but it has seeds with these special hooks in it, and as you walk past, the seeds capture the material of your trousers or whatever you happen to be wearing, or your sweater, and get stuck to your sweater, and then you pick them off later on, and then that helps to distribute that type of plant further out into the environment. But what a beautiful design in natural engineering. We've adapted it very beautifully, the use of Velcro, which is used all in so many different applications, and one I'd like to mention specifically is on the International Space Station. And you'll see lots and lots of Velcro on the space station, because obviously in space there's no what we call a microgravity environment, and things float around. So if you've got something like a hand phone up there, you'll put one piece of Velcro on the hand phone like this, and you'll stick it on the back of the hand phone, and then you'll have Velcro patches all over the spacecraft wall. And if you have finished using your home fan phone, you just clunk it onto a patch on the wall, and it'll stay there until you peel it back off again. So what a wonderful design that is, Velcro that has come from a biomimicry of plants with hooked seeds on them. So that was a pretty cool invention, I think. And these are some of the typical, what you say is everyday uses of biomimicry in our current engineering environment. As you can see here at the bottom right-hand corner, we've got the hooks, the plastic hooks, and then the soft material above, which makes up the two sides of the Velcro, stolen from nature. Thank you very much. The next one I think is just extraordinary, and we've used this typically with engines for all. Now, you may have never noticed there's a similarity between an ant's nest and a motorbike engine, but in fact there is. And this is what I think is a remarkable part about biomimicry, as well as some thermal heat distribution. As you can see, the this huge termite, I just went past in the slide, sorry. This termite mound here is made up of a series of fins, and you can see how the surface area of this anthill has been maximized to both absorb and distribute heat throughout the termite nest. Now, a termite nest has to be kept at a very, very specific temperature in order for certain activities and a food process to occur inside the termite's nest. So the termite has naturally built cooling fins on the exterior segment to maintain a stable temperature inside the termite's nest, okay, that being 78 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very important for the termites to maintain their living environment, and none more so similar than you have in an air-cooled engine. Now, most of you who've probably students here have ridden a motorbike at some stage, and your motorbike's temperature is a very important thing because it's regulated by air cooling. It's exactly the same process that termites have used for millions of years to maintain their temperature. It's once again biomimicry. We've taken this design element and used it in machinery to maintain the temperature of the combustion chamber inside the motorbike engine. If we didn't do this, then the motorbike engine would overheat, and obviously that's not a good thing, and it'd start to seize. So you can see once again it's an example of biomimicry, of using nature's natural processes to adapt those into mechanical processes. In this case, it's the distribution of heat from a motorbike engine. A termite mound, I might add, is an extraordinary place. It really is what I call a wondrous design in engineering, and in fact we actually use similar processes to cool buildings here. So we take cooler air at night time from the ground level, and then allow that to progress through the ant's nest during the course of the day. And it's exactly the same way buildings have been cooled for centuries. In fact, it's using this process of flow through of air. It's something that the ants have done for a long time and the termites have done for a long time, and we've adapted that process for our own purposes in building design, especially when you're living in a hot and desert countries. So just another example of how we've replicated what the natural environment has done, the more biomimicry in natural engineering. Here's another one. I think this is just incredible, because if this doesn't look like it's been taken out of the nature's playbook, then I don't know what has, but it certainly refers to a very, very high technology that's being created at the moment, and this is with stealth aircraft. And as you can see at the moment, you can see the Hawk, the outline of the Hawk at the top, and then the outline of the B-2 strategic bomber underneath. Now, if that isn't taken out of the nature's playbook, then I don't know what is, even to the point where they've sort of tipped the curve of the beak down a little bit. But certainly you can see here the efficiency of this design is based on natural design principles to create lift. Now, the B-2 bomber is a very odd-looking aircraft with sort of a pair of sort of triangular wings that head backwards. It's designed to be stealthy, it's designed to be fast, but it's also designed to create lift. And it's not only the wings that create lift, but it's the body of the aircraft that creates lift as well, very much similar to its animal friend here, the Hawk. So once again, we have borrowed nature's design work to actually incorporate the design of a military aircraft, and that being the case of the B-2 bomber. But it just doesn't end there, because in a sense, from the aerospace side, the whole design concept of the wing itself and flight itself came from the study of birds to begin with. I mean, birds, I think the first flying animals that were present on Earth, are we talking about hundreds of millions of years before it's fossilized evidence of flight, reptilian animals that could fly. It's always been based on the same principle of this shape of the airfoil here, and you can see the airfoil on the top left-hand corner here. It's a very important design because the airfoil it creates a differential in pressure above and below the airfoil surface. And if you have low pressure on top of the airfoil and high pressure underneath, then you create a force called lift, and the wing remains aloft. Now, whether it's a bird's wing or an aircraft wing, they all principally have similar designs. And these designs were noted by humans for hundreds, if not thousands of years, to be an airfoil shape. And it's the adaptation of that shape into aircraft that allows aircraft to fly. And don't be under any illusion about the fact that people like Wilbur and Orville Wright, who designed one of the first powered aircraft, going back as far as Leonardo da Vinci, who adopted the principle of the airfoil in his wings and his designs of flying machines. The airfoil comes directly from the bird and the flight of the bird and its extraordinary design progress over millions and millions and millions of years. So biomimicry, in a very real sense of the word, happens in the aerospace industry, and it's not just with wing design, it happens in all sorts of different areas of flight and flight design. We do take a lot out of the playbook of nature's ability to fly. It is just extraordinary when you think about it. A great survival mechanism as well. And I'm always extraordinarily humbled by the fact that the airfoil shape is such a beautiful shape, but the difference in pressure from the top and the bottom creates lift, and what an extraordinary natural progression that's been. I'm always amazed. Moving on, here we go, the aerospace industry, biomimicry and aerospace design. This is probably one of the most remarkable elements of all. I'm sure everybody's here seen a dragonfly. These creatures have a simply remarkable way of navigating through air, and I'm sure all noticed how dragonfly can fly in almost any direction. They can go sideways, up, down, backwards, forwards. They can hover in one spot with a remarkable precision. Did you ever stop to think how a dragonfly does this? I mean, the extraordinary control mechanisms involved, the muscular control, the neural control that's required to fly in three-dimensional airspace. It's a remarkable function, and yes, we've been trying to recreate that function through the use of microelectronic technologies, which are only just coming to the market. This is a very, very new science. We've been trying to replicate how these extraordinary creatures fly for decades now, and it's only until recently that we've managed to invent microelectronic devices small enough to actually allow us to get anywhere close to the extraordinary performance of a dragonfly. It really is a wonder of the skies. I do actually have a video at this point. Perhaps we'll save it till later. I'll show you the video because we'll just go to the video section a little bit later on. But I do have a video I want to show you of the work that scientists have been doing, and engineers of course, in replicating insect flight. Why is this important? Well, you can imagine a time in the future where there may have been some sort of disaster, an earthquake or a flood or a nuclear accident of some sort, and one would say that it'd be possible to open up a suitcase with your swarm of small electrical dragonflies. Each of them has a special sense of sensors on them which send data back to a receiver which can tell you all sorts of things about the zone of the critical radioactive levels, the water levels, if there's survivors, if there's heat signatures under there. This is the type of what we call swarm technology which we will probably depend on in future for all sorts of different military operations, security operations, rescue operations, and the ability to make things incredibly small and portable that work very similarly to their natural counterparts. In that particular case, the remarkable dragonfly. All right, so let's move on. This is truly remarkable, and you all know this little fellow here. You've all seen them on the wall making that strange noise like that at night time. It keeps me awake some nights, but I love my geckos. They keep the insects away and eat all the mosquitoes, and I really, I don't know why people try and catch them, and I think they're lovely. They do poo everywhere though, don't they? Anyway, that's a small price to pay. A little gecko poo for eating an insect or a mosquito that might be an 80s carrying mosquito. I encourage the geckos, but what a remarkable ability. How do they stay attached to vertical and horizontal upside down surfaces? I think that is just, have you ever stopped to think, what is going on here? I mean, I think people spend most of their lives looking at these things and not even for 1 minute do they think, why does a gecko stick to a wall? And not just any wall, it's glass, it's paint, it's concrete, it's anything. What makes it so? Why is it so? And these are the questions I love to ask, and scientists have been asking the question, why does a gecko stick so beautifully to all surfaces? And I tell you what, the geckos invented the most insane system to keep it stuck to any surface. I am just gobsmacked by the extraordinary design and engineering, and it's all about little fibers and tendons, okay? And we've just started to copy this off, and here it is here, just in case you didn't know, here is a gecko's foot. And as you can see, it's got this sort of remarkable sort of geometric pattern on each of its toes. I don't think anybody's ever picked a gecko off a wall and said, my goodness me, its foot looks amazing. But certainly some people have, and this is what it looks like. And if you take a very close microscopic photograph, you can see that each of those foots is covered in millions of tiny little fibers, and each of those fibers is attached to actually quite stiff tendons, okay? Tendon is a slightly stiffer joint. We have tendons in our body which join our muscles to our bones, and it's similarly tendons join this very soft fibrous material to tendons inside the foot, which give the gecko control. Now, each of these fibers has a tiny little electrostatic attraction to a surface, okay? And if you have millions and millions and millions of them, then that makes up quite a strong actual electrostatic capability to attach to any surface whatsoever. What we're still a little bit confused about is that once you're attached, how do you actually detach yourself? And these are questions that we're still asking as scientists. We still don't fully understand the process, but my goodness me, you've seen it work pretty well, and those geckos can move very quickly if they want to. But what we have done is we've actually replicated the ability to the abilities that geckos do have by actually recreating to some extent the type of materials that they use to stay stuck to walls. And as you can see here on the left hand side is an actual gecko toe fiber, and you can see underneath it's got the tendinous attachments there, and then these incredible toe pads covered in thousands and thousands of little fibers which have a slight electrostatic properties. And then on the right hand side here you can see we've actually recreated the same thing using very specialized materials to actually replicate the capability of the gecko to stay attached to certain surfaces. Now, this is one of the extraordinary capabilities that we're producing in engineering, is, you know, to replicate how geckos stay stuck to things. And if we can do that in engineering, just imagine all the things you could do. I mean, literally, you could put Spider-Man gloves on and walk up the side of the building. I mean, think about it. You could do so many different things. You could lift loads. You could replace adhesives and cements and all sorts of things. You know, the options to do this are just enormous. So that's one very exciting thing which I think scientists are definitely looking into replicating, is the extraordinary capabilities of geckos. And next time you see one, just give it a bit of thought. How do you stay stuck to that wall? All right, the next one's the fun one. I think this is where mimicry is just, it's gone into high gear at the moment, and none more so than the robotic dog. Here he is, the robotic dog. And I think what they've done now is created a type of robot that is incredibly efficient at maneuvering, and this has always been one of the things, is what we call the ability for robots to actually mechanically move around surfaces. And this is an area in engineering where we've looked to nature to sort of say, okay, how do we replicate what animals do beautifully, and especially no more than the four-legged friends, our friends the cats and the dogs. And what we've now created is these extraordinary robots, and I have some videos I'd like to show you in just a short while, but these extraordinary animals that are robotic in nature, but actually have a very important characteristics, and one of that is that they can walk across almost any terrain. And as you notice, that any four-legged creature has the ability to walk pretty much everywhere, whether it's sand, whether it's dirt, whether it's rock, whether it's smooth surfaces. Four legs helps you to move quite easily across these types of terrain. So what they've done is they've taken that capability and put it into robots, allowing these robots some of the most remarkable abilities to maneuver and locomote. And I'm going to show you a video now, because you've got to see the dogs from the so just going to jump out of this just for a moment. Let's just get back to here. I've got some videos I'd like to show you. Just jump across here. One moment, please. Where is my, here it is here. Okay, here it is. So first of all, I promised the insects, okay. So can we get that, yeah, you just want to replicate my screen, please. I've got one of the technical assistants here to help me just replicate the screen. There we go. Duplicate, there it is. Okay, good, there it is there. Thank you very much. All right, so first of all, I talk to you about these flying insects and electronic insects, and we've got it a pretty small size now, and you can see here the university team of researchers from Harvard made these tiny, and these are really small. They're about the size of a pencil tip, and unfortunately, obviously they don't have batteries small enough to put in these things, but you can see the wires attached. But yes, we've got to a very high level of actual progress when it comes to replicating flight. Here it is here.
A team of researchers from MIT,
here,
Harvard
these
University,
are actually
and City University
powered
of
by
Hong
those
Kong
little cables you can see hanging off them. But you can see the little wings beating off the side there, and evidently they've got a very high level of control now. So you can see the actual thing here itself. It's got this is the little actuator in the centre. It's probably got a very highly switch there. You can see the wing there, and it's pretty much perfectly replicated the actual motion of an insect's wing. And so much so they've even stolen some of the designs of the insect wing by using those spars. But as you can see here, it looks quite strange. I have to say, it's a wobbly thing. But yes, they've used insects to make the design of insects to actually make a flying platform, and stuff like this could be very useful in all sorts of applications in future. You've seen what drones can do with propellers. Can you imagine the capabilities if we can make this smaller and more compact? The endless possibilities to create flight using replicating insect wings and the dragonfly's extraordinary flight performance. So there's one there. I think that's really been a very forward and frontier area of research, is replicating flight, as do the insects. Okay, so, and especially the large bumblebee. And in fact, bumblebees, they never knew how bumblebees actually flew until they slowed their wing motion down and discovered that bumblebees use a very special type of wing motion to remain aloft. Okay, so there it is, one, and then we have to go next to my DARPA robots. I love these guys. These are so, hang on again, I'll just get the, this one here. Here we go, spot on. Here's Spot here, okay? Here's Spot for you. It's a lot of fun. There's a bit of soundtrack for this, so are we ready to go for a bit of sound? Yep. Can we have sound, please? Sound, action. Welcome to probably, some of you have seen this before. If you haven't, just enjoy the show, because it truly is remarkable. What these robots do is nothing short of extraordinary. So let's have a go. Here we do the Spot the robot, and there should be a bit of soundtrack for this as well. Tell me this doesn't look like living creatures. Okay, good.
When I look into your eyes, all the things you fill my mind. 새로운 만남들은 나를 충전해. They were bumping into something, new possibility. 어떤 날 resting. Better focus on what's charging me. 가끔 길을 잃을 때면 I got you. 영혼의 쥐돌 따라가. 힘없이 달려가다 네가 지칠 때 내가 네 휴식이 돼줄게. I'm on it. Chase my chance. I own it. Takes me there. 내가 원하는 건 simple. 멀리 보다는 함께 가고 싶어. Show the way. I am Nick, 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 I am Nick. Yeah.
There it is, simply remarkable. I think the idea of biomimicry there comes truly into focus. I mean, extraordinary capabilities, extraordinary capacities, and they're now even thinking about robot dogs on Mars, which is, I think, very interesting because, in fact, the current Mars rovers, which also have a certain type of biomimicry involved in them as well. I'll show you that in just a short while if we get time towards the end. But the Mars rovers actually roll on specially built wheels, and it's actually, we've discovered these wheels are actually very prone to damage on the Martian terrain, and the recently launched Perseverance rover, they made some changes to design, but the first heavy rover they sent to Mars, which is called Curiosity, it weighed over a ton, and in fact the wheels have become quite seriously damaged over the years because of rocks and sharp objects. And it's becoming apparent that wheels are not actually a very effective way of moving across interplanetary surfaces. But you put a robot dog on Mars and away you go. You have no more problems. You can move very clearly in all sorts of different directions without the same constraints as wheels. And my guess is probably future robots on Mars will actually be looking very similar to the ones you've seen just there. But it doesn't stop there, my friends, because mimicry has come to robotics in just the most extraordinary way, and none more so than creating humanoid robots. And this is probably a maker, is just simply a remarkable machine. Now, humanoid electronics and the replication of humanoid forms electronically has been around for a long time. And I remember when I went to Disneyland in 1974, yes, centuries ago, I was just amazed. We did the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and they had all this animatronic robotics going on through the ride. It was very hard to tell that some of these people, you know, the figures there weren't actually real humans. It was a big thing even then. But what has changed now is the artificial intelligence has been added to this, so that now machines respond and react to their environment without any pre-programmed movements. And no more better to be exemplified is the robot maker. Now, I'm not going to play the whole interview, not to mention the interviewer is not really asking very intelligent questions, but what I am going to do is show you some segments from this video just to show you the remarkable capabilities of this robot. Just here's a maker. Truly amazing stuff. Some people find it even a bit unsettling. I could say that when I first saw this, it made me sort of stop and think for a little while. So here's a maker. I might no more do. I will just jump through segments of the video, have a look at a few, about a minute to 2 minutes. Okay, here it is. So you can see a maker robot here responding. Hang on, we'll just get this out of the way because here it is here. Okay, so here's now remember, this robot's not responding as a pre-programmed, it's responding naturally to its environment. It's not pre-programmed, there's nobody with a joystick, there's nobody who's pre-programmed these movements in. This robot is responding to its environment using artificial intelligence. It's just don't you love that cheesy grin?
It's the vision.
Obviously inspired by the movie I, Robot and the amazing work of Isaac Asimov.
So we designed
a maker has really reached new heights.
We envisage humanoid robots to be in the future.
And how do you create those really human expressions? I mean, looking at Amica respond.
This is OutSystems, the most complete
Oops, sorry, we just got an advertisement there. Excuse me, we'll just jump through that. Just one moment.
To you, there's little movements of eyebrows, if you can call them eyebrows. How did you actually build the robot to look so human with those expressions?
Well, what we do is we first look at a real human. It's what we call animation first. So what does a real human do? How do they move? And then we take that animation and we design mechanics around it. So the mechanics can only do what a human can do. Yeah, see, she whacked me. Once we've got that, then it's quite easy to automate those expressions because whatever the mechanics do looks lifelike. So Amika's got quite a few motors in its head. But we can see Amika going through some facial expressions now, opening her mouth. A big wide smile is one of the things that we want Amika to do. So big smile, Amika. Lovely. Very thoughtful.
Where would we kind of see this robot, Amika, out in the wild?
This is mainly probably service robotics. So the actual interaction with humans, moving around in a human space, that's going to come in the future. Well, I'm talking probably 10 years before you're actually going to see something like this walking amongst us.
Are you expecting in, say, 10, 20 years from now that we could see Amika robots walking, running, dancing, climbing? Are they going to start looking like Boston Dynamics robots that can run across a field at speed? I'm asking and also almost afraid of the answer here.
So this is why we created the artificial body. And the artificial body is a human-like form that everyone can relate to and everyone can interact with without having to look through a user manual.
So what kind of level of artificial intelligence have you baked in terms of the communication capabilities and Amika understanding and responding, even speaking to you?
So there's some artificial intelligence, and most of the artificial intelligence at the minute that is on Amika is revolving around the vision system. So Amika does actually have a camera in each of its eyes, so it can see what's going on. So it can detect people, it can track their face, it can detect other objects, such as my finger. It can follow my finger around, I can wave at it, and then it can see it move backwards then.
What did you kind of think of the internet's response to Amika?
It's the emotion and how it moves, and the emotion that you get out of the face. Suddenly, that just sparked something in the social media universe.
There it is. Okay, so there's Amika robot for you, and I think you'd agree. It's just, if you haven't seen that already, it to me is just, a truly remarkable stepping stone in robotics. And as they say, it will be a short 10 years before you'll see these type of robots pretty much interacting with communities, doing things that we need to have done, whether it be the shopping or taking the dog for a walk or looking after the kids and doing a drawing exercise with the children. I mean, we're on that threshold now, and the point of biomimicry in this particular sense is very, very strong in that we've really come very close to recreating the humanoid form in such an accurate sense that it's certainly, when I look at this robot, and I think you'd agree with me, it gives you quite a strong response in how realistically and humanly it reacts to its environment. Quite extraordinary stuff. Anyway, moving on, and I think everybody's probably seen the Boston Dynamic robots dancing around. You saw that in the video there, but as you can see, it's taken off in leaps and bounds, literally, and our ability to make robots perform similarity to humans now is actually quite extraordinary, and a very much a rapidly growing area of engineering. Okay, so let's just move on a little bit. What I'd like to do now is actually show you one other thing. This is some of the ways in which we've used prosthetics in robotics as well, and I think one of the most important areas of biomimicry now is in fact in prosthetics, and just to underline that's in fact the replacement of human limbs with electronic limbs. It's taken on completely new form these days, and in fact if you've had an amputation of a leg or an arm, then you can actually have an electronic replacement which performs very similarly to the human the human real arm or leg. The technology is going in leaps and bounds at the moment to such a point that really before too long humans will actually be able to have replacement limbs that work very similarly to the limbs they've lost. Here's a quick video on just what the technology is doing at the moment.
Driving down the road, I had my arm laid over.
This
on
gentleman
the
here lost his, I think from memory, his left arm. His right arm still attached to him, thank goodness, but he has had extraordinary work done in prosthetic limb replacement. Have a look at this.
Amputee. So I stuck my hand out like this. He said, "Put that gun down." I said, "Well, this is not a gun. Come up and inspect." I said, "You can see, there's both hands. I can't do anything else." I said, "What it is?"
He's got a special attachment at the end of his arm there, which he's allowed to put on the prosthetic limb. And the attachment also has electrical sensors on it, which allow the prosthetic limb to understand what motions are being recreated or need to be recreated. So we'll just jump ahead a little bit here, just so we get the arm attached to him. But you can see a lot of electronic engineering goes into this, and obviously a lot of experimentation which has been done to get the technology correct. But I think we're very close to the threshold now of actually recreating these limbs to such a point that they become actually very usable now, and certainly very handy for the people who've lost limbs.
I've got a second
shaking his hand there.
chance of life.
He has to think this through. You have to train your brain to use these limbs, but apparently after some training, you can actually operate the limb
What he's testing here being the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, is a glimpse into the future of how humans and machines
that one would use when you're normally using your hands in everyday circumstance. So it's certainly very important technology, and I'd say this also extends to people now who've had spinal injuries. We're starting to work on special systems to replace nerve bundles, but the idea of prosthetics and biomimicry is very, very important, and will be a very big game changer for so many people who've lost limbs, who've become incapacitated because of their injuries, and now can have electronic replacements that do exactly the same job or near exactly the same job as the original limb they lost. So certainly an amazing area, and I've seen children with prosthetic, electronic prosthetic replacements, and you know, if you can imagine the joy that this must give to young people to have their full operation of their limbs back again, it must be just amazing. So one very important area of biomimicry certainly is prosthetics and limb replacement. Okay, we move on. We better get this finished because we're running out of time. How are we going for time at the moment, fellas? We good? Are we okay? Let's go back to the PowerPoint quickly, and then I'll take you back to the slide we finished on, because there's a couple of other things I'd like to show you before we finish up today. Certainly with robotics, there's a couple more videos I'd like to show you, but here we have just quickly some of the very important elements of robotics. And this slightly freaky looking robot here is slightly angry. Actually, what they've done here is you can see they've actually replicated the muscles of the robot using special pneumatic tubes. So this, once again, is a very interesting area of biomimicry, and robotics is actually using the similar types of muscles that we have in humans, which is in fact using pressurized air inside tubes, which allow the muscles to contract and expand, just as you have in your human body. Once again, we are applying these technologies to robotics to get what we describe as more realistic robotic movement. I in fact have a video of that robot. It's certainly very amazing to watch it. It's not quite as intelligent as or dynamic as the robots that you've seen already, but certainly these technologies are being developed at the moment to create more and more realistic movements, and none more so than our friends the robotic spiders. Absolutely incredible. I mean, this is just another technology, and this is probably what you'll see crawling around the moon and Mars and planets in future, going on missions in difficult to find areas. For instance, a building's collapsed and you want to see if people are inside, then we put the spider down there and it crawls through spaces where other things couldn't go. This is a type of biomimicry which I think could save lives and have an enormous impact on how robotics influences everyday society in very important ways. Once again, the prosthetic limbs, I think it's probably one of the most important elements of biomimicry at the moment, because so many people have lost limbs, and giving them back their full functional control of parts of their organs of their body they've missing is, to me, one of the great elements of medical science at the moment. So certainly from my point of view, I think this is one of the most incredible areas of biomimicry, is how we replace people's limbs. You saw it in Star Wars, now you see it for real. Okay, now we get to something which I think is just, to me, just blows it to pieces. What you're looking at here is probably one of the most extraordinary mechanisms in nature, and that is simply a spider's spinneret, as it's called, which produces the silk to make the web. You can see on the left-hand side of the page, that is a real photograph of a web. It looks like a rainbow because the guy shot it with a special strobe flash, and it refracts the light coming back. But this is remarkable, and the spider produces this silk with the most inside its body is a remarkable chemical factory which produces this incredible silk thread, which has enormous tensile strength, incredible. So yes, we want to replicate this, and yes, we are doing work to replicate this exact process, and none more so with artificial fibers. And as you can see here very clearly, there's a fiber which is the spider's silk, and as you can see, it's made of certain types of atoms. You can see in there it's got hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen atoms, all in special bonded systems in polymer, what we call polymer chains. And these chains and proteins are very beautifully attached together to allow the silk to have a very special strength. And not only that, it's got special sheaths outside it to give it extra strength. It's a remarkable design of nature. And yes, we're replicating that with very, very special materials called Kevlar, which have very similar chemical properties to the silk. And we are still working on systems to improve on how we can get closer to producing the ultimate spider silk for the ultimate purposes of strength and properties of tensile strength. So this is one of the areas of engineering, and we look to the wonderful work that nature already does in the extraordinary chemical factory inside a spider's abdomen to actually tell us the secrets of how spiders make their silk and how we can adapt those secrets to making materials, and Kevlar being one of the most resilient materials we've invented so far, so much so that it's usually the material of choice for bulletproof vests. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of how important that sort of technology is to us, protecting the police force and the army, armed military people from gunfire, which I think is really important. And you can see here, this is just a bit of an indication of how spider silk is made. Just extraordinary. It really is amazing. They've got these little special spinnerets out the back of their abdomen, but inside their bodies is this chemical plant which produces all sorts of different types of chemicals that mix together in spinnerets and then eventually come out as spider webs. And I'm sure you're all aware of what a spider web looks like and how extraordinary they are for catching their prey. And the last but not least is another extraordinary animal. This is a sea slug. Now, I've done thousands of dives on the reef, coral reefs, and the sea slug was always a common sight on the ocean floor. And when you pick them up, they actually ejected what's called their Cuvarian tubules. And the Cuvarian tubules, if you touch them underwater, they would stick to you without, and you really had to work to get it off. It was like trying to pick off super glue. And this is just another example of natural systems that we're trying to adapt to physical processes and engineering processes. So what we do here is that we've used these technologies to make adhesives that work underwater. How cool is that? Can you imagine using sellotape underwater? But these adhesives are so important because they can be used in surgical procedures where you have ligaments and parts of delicate organs that need to be held together in what would be described as a wet environment. How can you use a normal adhesive for that? You cannot. There's nothing that will do it. But yes, you can use adhesives that come from these, on this side, from these extraordinary creatures. Their Cuvarian tubules are incredibly sticky, even underwater. And I remember getting them on my wetsuit, my skin, and you'd have to spend about 10 minutes after dive rolling the stuff off just a crazy natural technology that has a very important implications for how we can use these solutions for surgical procedures, which is what they're doing already. And they've actually found a similar byproduct on slugs, and they use that to actually glue people's hearts together during surgical procedures instead of using sutures which do muscular damage. So let's just say that biomimicry has extraordinary potential, and I think one of the most important things to remember, ladies and gentlemen, is that we look to the future and we look to people that are doing engineering and in engineering courses now to just not accept the environment around you, but to study it and understand it for what it is. And I always love to look at things and think, how is it so? Why is it working like that? And that's where the search for engineering solutions begins. It begins with you and asking the questions and saying, can we adapt this to use it in a specific function in our society for a certain solution? And that's what engineering is all about. And this is what the biomimicry competition is all about too. I hope today has given you a bit of an idea of how biomimicry works in a more specific way. But what we're looking at now is for your innovative and creative approach to coming up with solutions and suggesting them to us, because don't forget, not only do we need the solutions, but we also love to give you a little bit of cash for your special ideas and innovations, and there's a cash prize to be won. We look forward to seeing what you come up with. Please get busy, start a team, get working with your friends, and tell us what your biomimicry solution for the future is. This is Sam Gibbs from STEM for All Makerspace. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing your special submissions in the coming days. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.